8.1 Samples and Populations. In this chapter 8, where we're talking about statistics, we have to go over a bunch of definitions. So just like at the beginning of chapter 7, let's talk about 1, 2, 3, 4 definitions. One is population. Population is the entire group of people or objects. And when you take a sample, you take a part of that population. And your sample can either be unbiased, meaning it's representative of a population. It's a large sample, and you've randomly selected. There's a biased sample, which is not representative of a population. Basically, it's showing some sort of favoritism, or you're using too small of a sample. So let's look at this example here. You want to estimate the number of students in a high school who ride a bus to school. Which sample, A, B, C, or D, is unbiased, meaning which one is representative of a population? So A, you have 4 students in the hallway that you're going to survey. And that is a biased sample because it's too small. B, all students on the soccer team. Well, that's just selecting one part of the school, right? There are many students besides the students on the soccer team. So 1, you're just selecting a select group and it's too small. C, 50 12th grade students at random. Well, this one's a little better because it's at random, but you're only selecting 12th graders. You also need to have your freshmen, sophomore, and juniors included in that random sample. So C is also biased. Then you have D, which has 100 students at random during lunch. And so I believe D is the best example of an unbiased sample. Okay, the other thing we have to do when we're talking about statistics and looking at populations, we have to consider if the conclusions that were drawn, if they're valid. So let's look at this. We have a survey that we're doing, and we want to know how the residents of our town feel about adding a new landfill. So we have 2 conclusions here that were drawn based on some data that was gathered. So the first conclusion says we surveyed 100 residents who live closest to the new landfill. Okay, and this diagram over here shows the results. And we conclude that 10% of the residents of our town support the new landfill. Now, remember, we surveyed 100 residents that live closest to the new landfill. So all these people here live close to the new landfill, and most of them are against it, and only 10 of them are for it. So our sample that we collected is not representative of the population because these residents, they live too close to the new landfill, and so they probably have an opinion about whether or not they want to live right next to the new landfill. So the sample is biased, and the conclusion is not valid. Now, in this second example, we survey 100 residents at random. The table over here shows our results. Okay, so 60% do not support it and 40% do support it. Now, since we selected 100 residents at random, and it's a fair amount of residents, our sample is unbiased and our conclusion is valid. Okay, so now you have to write in your notes, and in your notes, all you have to do is match the definitions with the 1, 2, 3, 4 words. Okay, and the last piece of this chapter is applying our survey to a real life situation. So we ask 75 randomly chosen students at school how many movies they watch each week. Okay, there are 1,200 students in the school, and we're selecting 75 of them, and we're going to estimate based on our sample the number of students in the whole school who watch 1 movie per week. Okay, so first of all, we have to ask ourselves, is our sample representative? And the answer is yes, because 1, we selected at random, and 2, our sample is fairly large. Okay, so our sample is representative and it is unbiased. So we can use these results here to estimate the number of students in the whole school who watch one movie a week. But based on our sample here, how many watch one movie a week? That would be 21, right? 21. So 21 out of our 75 watch one movie a week, and we want to estimate how many for our 1,200 students, right? So we can set up a proportion and we can solve for x. And that gives us, if we multiply both sides by 1,200 and simplify it out, we find that 336 students in our whole school watch one movie a week. Okay, so now you have one practice problem that has 2 different parts in it. So you can go do that now, and then we'll talk about it. All right, this practice problem involves us, we want to know how the residents of our town feel about a ban on texting while driving. So we want to figure out if our conclusions in A and B, if they are valid. So let's look at what we did first in situation A. We surveyed 200 residents at random, and this table here shows us our results, saying that 164 support the ban and 36 do not support the ban. So we can conclude then, or we do conclude then, that 82% of the residents of our town support the ban. Okay, they found that by what? 164 divided by 200, right? And that gives us 82%. But our question is the sample unbiased? Well, we selected at random, and we did a large number of residents. So our sample is unbiased, and the conclusion is valid. Okay, the second situation, we surveyed the first 15 residents who drive into our neighborhood, and this diagram here shows us our results. And we conclude from these results here that 33% and 1/3% of the residents support the ban. But let's look at, is our sample representative? It's only 15 residents, kind of small number, and it's only the ones who drove into our neighborhood. So our sample is biased, and therefore our conclusion is not valid. All right, that concludes 8.1.